It's April 15th and this is what I have going on in the garden today. This is the border along the driveway. I have some daffodils and other flowering bulbs, tulips and hyacinths that I planted. I have lilies and some hostas coming up. The deer tend to eat the lilies and the hostas. I sprayed deer off to prevent them from snacking on my on my driveway, but it doesn't work usually towards the end of the summer after a little bit of rain. It's kind of bland and it needs to be cleaned up, and I want to broaden it. I want to add some winter elements to it. It goes all the way down to the end of the drive. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I need ideas for New York winters. Something that's going to thrive, but I want it to look pretty in the winter. I want it to look pretty in the spring. I'd like something that flowers in the summertime. Something that's going to not look drab. And I need a definition between the grass and the border. So I have to fix that and clean that up. This is my favorite plant here. My favorite flowering tree. It smells glorious. A little cherry blossom. And it is not in full bloom because it seems like every time it goes to full bloom we get a windstorm or lots of rain and the petals just fall off. You can see them falling like snowflakes, but it smells so good. So I have that on my list to do, to clean that up, clean my borders up and clean this area up, and figure out what I'm going to plant along the driveway so that it looks pretty in all the seasons and not just in the springtime with the flowers. I want some sort of interest in all the seasons. So my first two rows in the garden, I have a lot of garlic sprouting. I probably will not repeat that next year. I'm not going to put it inside the garden fence. I'm going to put it outside. I have to get some extra raised beds and get them prepared outside of the gates, because the pests don't seem to bother with the garlic, and it seems like a huge waste of space inside the gate. So we have a couple of different varieties, one soft neck, one hard neck, but they're definitely not ready to be pulled up yet, and they do last a long time. So I have my winter or spring brassicas. I have celery out here already in this bed with some pak choi. I did have a problem with bunnies for the past few years, so I ended up putting hard cloth around each bed, which makes it a little bit cumbersome for me to plant and lean over the wire cloth to get to the garden, but it seems to prevent the bunnies from getting in. I have this little pyramid that I'm going to fill up. I was thinking about how am I going to plant it once I fill it up. I have the water hose in it already. I was thinking about strawberries because I tried strawberries a couple of years ago, but I really didn't like wasting a whole bed, and they weren't prolific, but it does take a couple of years to establish, so I'll try that. It was filled up with soil last year, but the water had washed the soil out of it, so I'll have to put like a center with some hard cloth or some sort of cloth. Even I guess the white shade cloth would probably work, holding the soil in place and planting through that, so that there's no soil being eroded from outside of it. But other than that, it's a great idea. And then I planted in this raised bed. This is the highest raised bed I have. I planted a couple of carrots, different types, but not a lot because they don't usually grow for me. But I said, okay, I'll give it one more shot. And I planted radishes, black radishes, and I think French breakfast or something like that. I have in this bed my asparagus, which is slowly coming up, and I'm super excited about it. But again, the rain will help let it come up, but it's just not coming up fast enough because I love my fresh asparagus. I have a couple of French peas here in the corner and along the trellis, and I think I planted a couple of cucumber seeds, but they didn't come up yet. It's still too cold. So I'll probably start some cucumbers inside. Here are my leeks. And I have a couple of brassicas in there that I was looking for just a space to find. Where am I going to put these guys? So I popped them in there, but I have some leeks to plant out. So I'm not sure if I'm going to keep them in there or just transplant them to someplace else. In this bed, I had out under a row cover onions or chives. I think they're chives. I have, oh, can you even see that? Chives, and then I have chamomile coming up. That was from last year. And then I have some brassicas, cabbage, and I think it's cabbage and kale, and it looks like one turnip sneaked in. And the other side is too. These didn't fare as well as the first row. There's a lot of empty space, but you know what? The way I see it, if there's empty space, I could just pop a couple of more plants in there, which is fine by me. Against the other trellis, I have more peas that I planted, so they'll be climbing up that trellis. I don't even think that trellis is high enough to deal with that, but I will work on that as the time comes. So I have the longest bed in the back, parsnips, pak choy. I have snap peas, sugar snap peas in the center, which I have to trellis today. The parsnips, I didn't plant them this year. They came up from last year. Last year's, I guess I missed something, or they just didn't bloom the first year. They decided to grow the second year. And I have my broccoli rabe and my cabbage and my broccoli and some kale. My winter stuff. This is pak choy. I have green pak choy and I have purple pak choy. They're just not that happy this year. They grew better last year, but I think they were larger when I transplanted them out into the garden. Because last year was so cold, so they stayed inside longer. Last year I had carrots in here, but I'm not sure if I'm going to redo the carrots again. So I planted some more winter vegetables here. Look, I have something growing. I don't even know what that could be. It could be a squash of some sort, or a cucumber. I don't remember planting anything, but it must have come up from last year. And this is my tea garden. I planted thyme, and then I have some zinnia, which something's been munching on my zinnias. Got the leaf on this one. I don't know which one it is. Something is eating it. So I'm gonna have to have a little bug hunt. It could be a snail. Here's my rhubarb. They're usually the first thing to come up every year. So I'm checking up on my skunky smelling Fritillaria. Yeah, it looks like they're going to be orange flowers. I don't see any more lily beetles, which is good. And we'll keep watching out for those. Looks like I'm going to have 2 flowers on this one. But they're kind of cool. Kind of cool looking. And as long as the deer don't eat them, I'll be happy.